Hi, it's Tracy and Sarah here, and welcome to episode 16 of Tell Me How You're Mighty, Infidelity Survival Stories. If you've been chumped, and if you're listening to this podcast, you probably have been, you learn at some point that it's a pretty common experience. And what's not common is talking about it. But when it happens to you, fellow chumps often reveal themselves. They might show up and help you move a cheater's crap into your garage. They might even share their story with you, and perhaps you went your whole life never knowing that this happened to them too. Well, last August, I was at Podcast Movement and I met our guest, Dave Jackson, who is a rock star in the podcasting world. He is a broadcaster, an educator, a tech guru, and in 2005, he started the School of Podcasting. And in 2018, he was inducted into the Academy of Podcasters Hall of Fame. And that's among other accolades. So I heard Dave speak and he was great. And I asked him a question and he asked me what Tell Me How You're Mighty was about. So I said it was about leaving cheaters and showcasing the stories of mighty people who got to the other side. And to my astonishment, he said that that had happened to him in his first marriage. That was before he became a podcasting rock star. And I said, "You're mighty. Would you be on our show?" And he graciously said yes. And here he is today. Welcome, Dave.
Oh, thanks for having me. This should be fun.
Well, it's probably not like the usual kind of podcast you do.
No,
Yeah.
which I actually love the fact that we're not going to talk about, microphones and bandwidth. So,
Well, you can if you want to, but we were going to talk about lousy experiences and divorce and sad things, but then coming out on the other side of them. So you seem to be an exemplar of this. And I thought your trajectory was so interesting. So could you tell me a little bit about what you told me when I first met you? I was so impressed with you that you are open about your story, because like I said, a lot of people don't talk about it. They kind of wear this shame that isn't theirs to wear. So can you tell me a bit about your terrible year then?
yeah, I think part of that, the openness is just my background as an educator, and I look at everything as a lesson, like what can I learn from this?
Mhm.
So, yeah, I had dated my first wife for 10 years. No, I take that back, 5 years, and then we were married for 10. And along the way, we had our ups and downs, but for the most part, we were living the dream, right? She kept getting better jobs. I kept getting better jobs. We bought a house. And when I married her, I know she had one ovary. So I knew having a child was going to be maybe a challenge. And she had some physical other things that were causing issues. And to make a long story short, we spent ourselves into bankruptcy having a kid. I do not recommend putting fertility treatments on a credit card.
Okay.
That was a bad idea. I knew it was a bad idea, but when your wife's crying and wants a baby, you kind of do whatever you want. So then 9/11 hit. That was fun. And we were literally, when I say paycheck to paycheck, there's a difference between being poor and broke. And when I talk about standing in front of a vending machine going, Mountain Dew, gas for the ride home. Which one I'm going to need that gas. Let's go with that. And as you might imagine, when somebody finally looks at you and says, "Hey, you can't have a baby," like it's just not going to
Oh,
happen for you guys. That was devastating.
I
And I
bet.
was kind of like, I mean, I was disappointed, but I was like, my default reaction is let's make a joke. Let's try to make it lighter. This is really depressing. Let's try to laugh about it. So I was like, hey, it's more money for us,
Yeah.
kind of thing. But the problem was when 9/11 hit, her hours got cut. And it wasn't a lot, but it was
Mhm.
all we needed to have that domino start going. And
Wow.
so I took a job at my same company. So I got a new position and it paid more money, which is what we needed. But I was gone probably 4 days a week. I was home basically on the weekends. And on the weekends, I was in a band because, we're living paycheck to paycheck and every bit of money helps. And so looking back, when my wife really needed me, right? We're going through this really emotional time. I left. And so part of that, I kind of go, yeah, that was, there are other things we could have done. We could have cut the cable. There are a couple other things I look back on, not completely saying, well, it's my fault, but I look back and go, that could have helped. And so, long story short, while I'm gone, she's comes from a family of alcoholics, and so she started going out with her mom on Tuesdays and the weekends, and then that became the weekends and Tuesdays and Wednesdays.
Uh-oh.
and occasionally Thursdays,
Oh,
and
no.
maybe on a Monday.
Maybe it
Yeah,
wasn't mom.
yeah. And so I just remember getting in lots and lots of arguments. And this is where I learned a very valuable lesson. You can't argue with a drunk person. Even though you want to, it doesn't work. And I just remember once saying, hey, like, and I tried to remove the word beer because beer would really trigger her. And I said, okay, which one is it going to be? So I drew a line in the stand, which is always a sign that your marriage is trouble when you're giving ultimatums. And I said,
Yeah.
yellow liquid or me? Which one's it going to be, kind of thing.
Well, then
And
there was a
so,
third option.
Beyond that, the fact that you're working so hard to bring the money in, and then that's being spent on alcohol. I mean, that's a whole extra issue, isn't it? There, you talk about how you could have made cutbacks and you could have been there, but she was
yeah,
making sure you weren't there by spending some of this hard-earned money on the drink.
yeah, there's that. And of course, boy, I got to watch how I say this. There are times if you're an attractive female, you can go into a pub or a bar and maybe have other lovely gentlemen buy you the drink. So it's not as expensive in some cases. Uh, but I've heard of females that will do that. And in this case, I don't know if she was doing it on purpose, but it was happening. And I never will forget that. So what I did, again, another thing was everything we used to do together, we just kind of quit doing.
Hmm.
Like she would purposely watch TV shows that I couldn't watch. I have a really weird thing where like she would love to watch these reality surgery shows, and I can't take blood. In some cases it makes me queasy, and if I see enough of it I will pass out. It's fun because I have no control over that. And so we just started to separate, and there was just a lot of like, I'm going to be in my room, you're going to be in your room, where we used to get together and watch TV. We weren't doing that, and things were just going the wrong way. And I remember my brother came to me because, again, both of us kept getting better jobs. So my brother got her a job where he worked, and he came to me the one day and said, "You might want to check on your wife." And I go, "Why?" And he goes, I think she might be cheating on you." I go, "Oh, no, 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 no." I mean, I'm said we have a pact. We've always said that if the marriage got bad enough, that if you thought about cheating, we would come to each other and go, "Hey, remember that cheating thing we are talking about?
Yeah.
I'm thinking about it. Let's and figure it out." So I was confident that's what we
Because you
agreed
had a
on.
conversation.
Yeah, we had a conversation, doggone it, and never thinking that, oh yeah, and your wife's drunk most of the time, because she was, and the good news is she's sober now, but at the time she was the bottle in the bottom drawer at work kind of
Oh,
person.
no.
Yeah, and so yeah, so she started hooking up with this guy um, at at work, and my brother I think had somehow seen or got a whiff of something, so he was trying to warn me, and that's
What an
one of the
awful way to find out, though. I mean, well, there's no
well
good way to find out, but
Well, the way I found out was I'm involved with my church, and I remember because it was a Wednesday night and I was a choir, and she's calling me just weeping over the phone. And I'm like, "What, did somebody die? What's going on?" "No, no, I just need you to come on. I just need you to come home." And so I came home and she was in the shower, and I'm in the bathroom like, "So what's going on? Like, what's, did I did this? Do I did this? No, did you do this? Didn't I?" "Well, good God, what'd you do? Cheat on me?" And she goes, "Yeah." And I just remember thinking my body didn't know what to do. Like I felt enrage, I felt betrayal. I just thought my body was just gonna like explode. I was like, I don't
yeah.
know what I'm gonna do. So I ran over to the other room because I just didn't know what to do. I ran out of the room, and I prayed the most sincere prayer I've ever said. I said, "Jesus, dude." So for any yes, I called my personal Lord and Savior, dude. I go, "Jesus, dude, you got to help me here." And I didn't feel great, but I didn't feel like I was going to blow up anymore.
Did she
And
tell you because she wanted to save the marriage then? I mean, because a lot of cheaters they never get to that point of confession, of wanting to tell their
yeah,
partner. So
what?
is there something in that she wanted to tell you because she knew it was wrong?
No, it was because we were going through a bankruptcy, and so we're working with a lawyer, and we're like, okay, we can keep the cars, we can do this, and if we do this one thing, we think we can keep the house. So we had to like double down on house payments forever, kind of thing.
Hmm.
And I think she saw that, like, hey, if we're gonna like recommit to the house, we're kind of recommitting to each other. And she just felt like I can't go into this with this secret. I guess I'm not really sure. I never asked her like, why did you tell me?
It was
Um,
kind of a way to hit the eject button, it sounds like.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
I think it was a case of this. Maybe this isn't savable. I'm not sure. I do remember after she told me this was, and she had moved out, and we were talking in the kitchen once, and she said, "Are you sure we can't go to therapy?" And I'm 23-ish, maybe something like that. Maybe a little older. I should know that. But anyway, and at the time I was just devastated. I said, "No, this is a can't get over kind of thing."
Yeah.
Now,
Good for you for knowing that about
yeah.
yourself.
Well, 30 years later, I'm like, man, I wish I would have gone to therapy, because the marriage number 2, we spent 6 years in therapy.
Oh,
She didn't cheat on me, but we just I've learned something, that if you meet somebody online and you do a long distance relationship, uh somehow get in the same like zip code of each other and date normal, because you don't really know somebody until you are around them a lot, and it's really easy to get along with people that you only see on the weekends. So
yeah. Well, you
so
gotta
yes, so
spend more.
she had told me that, and it was kind of funny. I at times, it's a personality I can be very um oh, what's the word? Logical. Like my brain is a little too robot at times. And I remember I walked out of the room and I thought, all right, I get my dog. That's the first thing I walked over and I said, I get Dudley. And she's like, what? And I go, I get Dudley. I'm like, but I don't want to talk about, I don't want to know any details. Whatever. And I just was like, let's start dividing stuff up, because we're done.
I think
And
it's really great that you were brave and decisive, because a lot of people do,
yeah,
do put themselves through a lot more pain by trying to salvage something that really ultimately isn't salvageable.
yeah,
And
that had been done before with all the arguing,
yeah.
and trying to do this and that. And it just,
Well, and
yeah,
you're not matched, because it's like it sounds like you were investing in the relationship, and the problems you had were kind of from deep sunk costs of wanting to have a child and wanting
yeah,
to deepen your relationship. And then you have someone who's not matching that investment and that energy, and is like checking out, and you're dealing with escapism, like whether it's booze or other men or whatever it is.
yeah.
While you're coming towards them, they're kind of running away from you. So you can't work with that. I think you might second guess it later, but that's a good call. But I do.
Is there an element of you that thinks that if you had gone to therapy, then you could have saved this? Because like Tracy's saying, it sounds like I'm quite I admire the way you just said no, that's it, you cheated, and that's non-negotiable, because so often you think of all the sunk costs, all the work you did to try and keep the finances going, all the investment going, trying to
Yeah.
have a baby, and so many of us just go, oh no, I can't just throw that all away. I'll try and save this.
Yeah. There's a part of my brain that goes, but what would have happened had you done that? But now that I think about it, she didn't quit drinking for years.
Oh no.
And if I had gone into therapy, one of my things would have said, okay, if we're going to work on this, you got to get sober. And I don't think at that point she would have said, okay, because she almost drove into somebody's house.
Oh no.
In fact, I took her to jail. Because if you can have friendly divorces, I'm somewhat good at that. And so, because I would always tell her, I'm like, you're going to kill somebody someday, and no, I know how to handle the cops and blah blah blah.
Oh Lord.
Yeah,
That's a lot of
and
drama.
yeah, and so it was weird, because we didn't have kids, we got really attached to our dogs. So I had one and she had one, and and this sounds so silly, but it was kind of, it is what it was. So once we separated and got divorced, we would literally get together like once or twice a month to do like a dog exchange, because I liked her dog. We always called them brothers, even though they weren't. And so we would just get together and catch up. And it was just one of those where it was like, yeah, you know what, we kind of messed this up. We both could have done things better. And again, all logic. And so it is what it is. And the
I
other
preach
one,
no contact. It's kind of hard to move on when you're still seeing your ex and her dog. You know?
yeah, well, what I did was I decided, I was like, okay, how much can I learn from this experience? This was horrible.
Yeah.
Don't want to go through this again. So that's when it was like, all right, let's read every marriage book. And I was like, oh, I could have done this, where, because I'm the kind of guy that if you make me mad, I'm going to take my ball and go home. And I was like, we should have found a way to argue better, which is kind of hard when you're an alcoholic. But I was very much, I'm going to go in my room and play video games and I'll see you in 3 hours, or I'll see you tomorrow or whatever. And I was like, which sometimes you need to go to your respective corners, but
Yeah,
that's
but
one I
you
go,
also got to have something to work with. I mean,
yeah,
I think because Sarah and I are both chumps, and we both threw everything at our relationships, and
yeah,
um, you can woulda, coulda, shoulda yourself to death, but I
to
think
death.
yeah, but at the end of the day, you have to have somebody who has the bigger picture, that shares your values,
Yeah,
that wants the marriage. And sometimes you get divorced because you believe in marriage, because you have those ideals and you have those values and the other person doesn't. It's a hard thing. And I know, speaking for myself, going through a divorce when I was young, it kind of set me up to be wobbly for for the cheater, for the sociopath that kind of came into my life later.
yeah,
And it sounds like maybe you had a similar kind of thing. I don't know.
yeah. It just was one of those where, and I think that's where the booze kind of in a weird way helped, because I
Yeah.
blamed the booze. I didn't blame her,
Hmm.
which is really not true. Like, you know what I mean? I always tell people, I don't care how drunk I get, I still know what I'm doing. And
Yeah.
I know, right. It's like I somehow, right and wrong, just I don't know what they mean anymore. Yeah, that was like, that's not an excuse. Sorry. But I think there were two other things that played into this. One was, this is somebody known for 15 years, and I really value friendship. And it sounds weird because she's not a very good friend because she's cheating on me, but
Yeah.
um, I in fact, I thought about it. I'm like, I don't really have any ex-girlfriends that if they called me today, I wouldn't pick up the phone. I'm always kind of like, you know what, we tried this, it didn't work. Okay, live well and prosper. I'll see you later, kind of thing. But I also, moving forward, my brother said something to me one day, and he said, "Hey, if you're going to start dating, can you do me a favor?" And I go, "What?" And he goes, um, "Can you maybe find somebody who has their," he didn't say act, but he said, "Can you find somebody who gets your act together?" And and I said, "Huh." And I went back to every single person, and I apparently they call this white knight syndrome, but everybody I dated always had a horrible childhood, and or something where, like an abusive spouse or whatever. And I'm like, look at me, I'm a man and I'm not terrible, coming to save the day. But the problem is those kind of activities in some cases can we all have our little brain tattoos that make us think certain things. And anytime you get into a relationship, this is what I've learned. If you ever get into a relationship, this person is perfect. Number one, there is no perfect, maybe, but not in my world. And but if I can just get them to change this, and I'm like, that if
No.
I can, yeah, that change thing is, because that's what marriage number two was. She did that kind of to me. Oh, this guy's perfect. If I can just get him to wear polo shirts and
Oh.
just like he has a yacht, maybe, I don't know. But I was like, and many other things. So
Well, you don't
it's
want projects. No, nobody.
no.
Everybody should come as an adult. You know.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and again, one of the things that drives me nuts being an educator, I think everything can be fixed through education. So if I just explain this to you and do this, then you'll get it. The light bulb will come on and life will be perfect. So
These
yeah,
are
but
common chump problems.
yes, exactly. If I just do this, yeah,
Or
it's
we could just research it. If we just read another book, there'll be a recipe, and I can
that's
figure
it.
out how to save
This
You,
is
them.
the
you
book
you
that's gonna
mentioned that
fix everything.
you blame the alcohol, and now she's not using the alcohol anymore. So
Yeah.
does that make you look at her now and think, oh, actually, the person she is now, without the drink, without the, how's that? Because you've obviously managed to maintain that friendship and that relationship with her. So how's that changed your relationship now?
Well, it's when I say relationship, I haven't talked to her in like every birthday. Like we go, hey, happy birthday, you or whatever, and then we'll be like, what's up? Oh, so and so had a baby. This is like it's a quick little catch up. Um, but it there is a part of me. Well, number one, she's even if she was single, there's just a part of my brain that goes, let's not. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's like so.
Too
I don't
much.
know. Yeah. It's like a lot of. It's like I think that's one of those that looks good on paper, but let's say we go down that road. There's going to come a part where I'm going to have to trust this person, and I'm like, when the rubber hits the road, can you really do that? And I'm like, and that's just one of those where that would take time invested to get to that point, and I don't want to invest that time to go, oh, you know what, I thought I could do this and I can't. And so,
So I'm curious, when you went through this, you were, relatively young guy still.
yeah,
Have you have you met other men who've been cheated on and like have you helped them through it? Because it's something my husband has had this sad experience. A lot of men do,
yeah, yeah.
right? Um, in fact, I run a blog called Chump Lady, and when I started it, I was at one of these conferences, and this guy said, "Oh, that's just for women, right?" And I'm like, "No, no, like." Everybody, men get cheated on too, and unless women are cheating with other women, or men are cheating with other men, or goats or something, it happens to straight guys. And he goes, oh no, they would never read about that, they would never talk about it. And so then Google Analytics shows me that like nearly half of my readers are men, but they lurk, so it happens to guys, but I don't think they're as open about it. But after this happened to you, have you helped any friends, or have you been a buddy to them or talk to them?
I have, and it's one of those things where I think you're right. I don't think guys like to talk about it, but you have to have, I guess, a certain level of friendship,
Hmm.
because most people are like, we're getting divorced. But one person I said, I'm getting divorced. I'm like, oh man, that's a bummer. And I'm like, you know, anything I can help you with? And he's like, oh no, it's she cheated. And I was like, oh dude, I've been there. And I think that just saying that, oh, I've been through that and
Yeah.
I'm still here, uh, is helpful. So, guys, if you've been cheated on, ask somebody else. Cause I think there's a part of it you can take. Well, obviously you're going to take it personal because we're people.
Yeah.
It's like, well, what's wrong with me? Why, how come everybody else isn't, getting cheated on? And this, and I'm like, no, no, there are plenty of people. And I think part of that might be what I call the Facebook effect, where everybody is like, look, my kid's a straight A student, and look, new car, and look, look, everything in my life is great. And like, no, it's not. So I think that's part of the reason why people maybe don't want to talk about it, because we have a false sense of what's really going on in the world. And that's just not the case. And so, yeah, it's just one of those where, and all you can do is share your experience and go, well, in my travels I did this, and this is what helped or didn't help or whatever. And
I think people are afraid they're going to get blamed. They're like, "What'd you do to?"
yeah,
Especially for women. I know it's a bit different for men, but well, men get it too. Like what needs weren't you meeting that you made her wander? And for women, it's like, were you not pretty enough? Did you spend too much time with the children? Did you do? There's just a lot of blame shifting, and so people are afraid to be vulnerable about it, and they're afraid that they'll be blamed for it, or found wanting. And I say we don't drive people to abuse us. We don't drive them to drink, and we don't make them hit us, and we don't make them cheat on us. That there are lots of ethical decisions on the decision tree, and cheating is not one of them. We all have challenges. Many have sucky childhoods or whatever. It doesn't give us permission to abuse people. And I just think there's scripts for men, why they might feel ashamed about the experience.
I
And
could see where guys might think, oh, because guys, it's all about sex, of course. So it's like, well, weren't you delivering the goods, buddy? Why couldn't you keep her? Why'd she have to go someplace else?
yeah,
And in my travels of therapy, guys, like, there's a great book called Love and Respect, and it talks about how it's very wide brush painting, but guys love
yeah,
to feel respected and women love to feel loved, but it's not just loved, it's cherished. Like, this guy would do anything for me. And so in both my marriages, that was not happening. And so I think when you cheat, I don't think it's like, oh, well, I was horny and he was there. It's like, no, no, I don't feel close to anybody. This person is giving me attention that you're not, and all sorts of other things that I don't think somebody wakes up and goes, I think I'm going to cheat today. I think it's a slow process of A, moving away from a partner, and B, somebody else just doing things that you're not.
yeah. But
Um,
there's a character element to it. I mean, yeah, you have to
oh
make a
yeah,
decision to cheat, but you have to. A lot of people have those same stresses. You had those stresses. Who did you cheat with? I mean,
right,
Sarah
exactly.
and I
That's
had
the
these. Sarah had 4 kids, and her husband was off
oh
screwing
man.
around. You
Yeah,
know,
so that's the difference. Is there's one thing, because we're human, we're going to be attracted to people. It's, do you act on it? And then,
what's your
because
character?
yeah, when I was married to wife number one, there was a coworker of mine, and we just got along really well, and it was just one of those where I was like, this is getting weird. This is, and I was just like, all right, we just need to back off on that. And it's like, hey, let's go out and get a drink. Like, let's not. that's not a good idea. So that's exactly what you're talking about. There
Yeah.
are times when things start to go down that path and you're like, oh, this is cute. I might have a crush on this person. That's not good. I'm married. And then you just have to like, okay, this is normal. This happens. Now what am I going to do to rectify it? And then you just like, okay, well, you go get yourself a boyfriend because I can't be that.
Because you had all the reasons you could have justified cheating as well, and you didn't. And I love the fact that you just, as soon as you heard it had happened, you said, "No, this is non-negotiable. That's the end of it." If everyone was like you, there would be a whole industry of therapists and counselors that wouldn't have their business going. Because, and actually, I do think you sort of raise a point that once someone has cheated, that's it. The trust has gone. Whatever you do, whatever justification, however much you talk about it, however much you come up with the reason, you can never get that complete trust back in a relationship. And don't you need that in a relationship? I think now, if I was in a perfect relationship and I found out that he cheated, that would be it for me now. I don't think I could ever accept cheating, whatever the justification.
Yeah, to me, it's because, I mean, it sounds silly, but like, it's not something like I fell down and cheated. You know what I mean? It's like there's some planning involved. There's plenty of time when you can say, hold on, so that's again the
And it's
logical.
devastating, right? I mean, I think that's the other thing people don't talk about. Maybe particularly men don't talk about it. I mean, you said you're on your knees, you're praying to your buddy Jesus. It's like it's a monumental shock. It's so painful, and it like reverberates in your life, and you just don't do that to people you love and care about. And I think we really minimize the effects of how painful it is. And what a violation is, and how hard it is to live with and get past. And so yeah, to me it's like I would find it hard to be friends with someone who cheated on me. Maybe a lot of distance, and
it took a while. You know what I mean? It's one of those where
I don't recommend it personally, but
yeah. And what was weird about it is when we did get together, it was like having a conversation with someone at the post office. What have you been up to? Working hard or hardly working? Blah, 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 and catching up on what it was a lot of like, here's what's going on in my family. Here's what's going on in my family. Oh, great. How's work? Work sucks. How about you? Yeah, work sucks. Okay, well, pet the dog and leave, And
okay. Well, I'm really curious about your trajectory, Dave, because like this is a pretty hard knock story here. I mean, you went through chumped, you went through bankruptcy, and now it's like, what is it, 2023, and you're in a hall of fame here, and you've built a whole other career in podcasting. How did that come to be? So you took these big knocks, and then you rebuilt. I mean, you rebuilt your life in a pretty major way.
I think part of it is one of the things that really puts gas in my tank, for lack of a better phrase, because I'm a teacher, is helping people.
Yeah.
And so when that marriage was over is when I launched the School of Podcasting. And I'd seen so many things kind of go by, and you're like, oh, I should think about that. And then it'd go by and I'm like, oh, I missed it. And then another one come by. Mm-hmm. And so this just showed up in my lap, and I was like, I've seen all these other things. I think I can help people on a global scale. Let's start a podcast. And it wasn't easy in the first day. So that's just something I think I've always done. I think I've never read the book, but I know there's like different people types. I'm definitely a people pleaser, which can be good and kind of bad. And it's funny because because people like, well, are you dating anybody? And I'm like, oh, I don't have time for that. And so there's a voice in my head that goes, so are you not dating people because you're too busy, or did you make yourself too busy so you can't date? And I was like, that's an interesting question. But at this point, it's funny. I have a sister-in-law that was born and raised on Harlequin like romance novels. And the fact that I'm single, she constantly tries to set me up with people that are, because she's younger than I am and much younger than I am. And I'm like, look, if they don't know who the Beatles are, that's not going to work.
That's a problem. You're probably going to get a lot of chumps reaching out to you after this podcast. Yeah. There's a lot of people who are like, where are all the good guys?
Well, it's weird. Yeah. So, and I just, to me, part of it is my grandma's fault. she would tell me, because my name's Dave Jackson, so she'd be like, hey, you have the last name of Jackson, like Andrew Jackson, which I found out later was a horrible president, but I didn't know
Yes.
that when I'm 7. And you have King David from the Bible, and you're guaranteed for great things, kid. And I'm like, okay, I don't think so, Grandma. But she was a big cheerleader, so I've always just kind of felt like, oh well, that I forget what year it was. Again, this is when I was dating
Mhm.
ex-wife one. My mom had just passed away, and I was kind of in this like, I don't want to be on this planet anymore. And I survived a carjacking.
Oh
Like
my God.
a guy shot at my car from like me to you. Like we're talking, he was standing in the front of my car. I pulled out backwards so I could run away, and he shot at my car,
Oh
and
my God.
the bullet hit the window and bounced into the door. And the last time I checked, bullets usually don't bounce off glass. And so I just kind of took that as like, okay, I no longer get that I do want to be on the planet, because I was almost not on the planet. And there's something here for me. I just haven't figured out what it is yet. And so it was like 3 years later, podcasting came along, and I was like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So I've just always like, all right, this didn't work. I've got another, whatever, 40, 50 years on the planet. What am I going to be doing? What? And that's just a Dave thing. It's a weird thing. When I've been at going back to when I was a grocery bagger, I've always tried to make it hard to replace me.
Mhm.
So when I was a paper boy, like the guy before me, if it was raining, I would just throw your paper on the porch, and I would put it in the door to keep it dry. Just like I always just want to do something a little more to leave the planet in a better place than when I was on it. So that's just a weird
No, it's a
thing.
beautiful thing. And I think unlike unlike people who are projects, won't put any value judgment, cheaters, whatever we call them.
Yeah.
It's like if you can throw yourself at something like podcast or a project, then you can actually make a change there. You can't change people, self-destructive people, but you absolutely can invest in yourself and captain your own ship. And that's a better bet, I mean, I think that's how I call it gaining a life. I think that's how you reinvent for the better.
And you talk about the wise advice that your grandmother gave you, and I think something that we often hear from our parents, grandparents, is everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
And so when you look back on being in a relationship where someone cheated, because I do this as well, I sort of sometimes look back on my life and I think, oh, if only I'd met someone that didn't cheat, didn't leave me with 4 kids, didn't leave me like this, life would have been very different. Do you think that the philosophy is just to sort of put it in the past, accept, or actually think actually that happened, it was awful, but it's given me the impetus to create the life that I've got now. So in some ways, although it was a negative then, it's now a positive.
Yeah, more the second one. I always try to, when something really bad happens, I'm always and this goes back to my mom. My mom told me once, she said, wherever there's a shadow, there's a light. And she's like, I just prefer to look at the light. And I was like, oh wow, mom's going deep on me. Because she married a guy that was a computer guy and ended up being a long distance truck driver. So like he was another guy that was gone all the time. And I was like, I've never heard you complain, Mom. And she's like, I tend to look at the light, not at the shadow. And so I always try to wring something out of it, even if it's horrible. Like even when my mom died, I was like, all right, well, I guess I'm going to get to know my dad now, like, because he's going to
Mhm.
be like, we're going to be working together more. And so I always just try to find that, because I am completely human. There are days when I just want to pack it in and you just curl up in a ball with some ice cream and, watch This Is Us marathon and cry my face off, and that happens. And you just have to realize like, okay, that was fun. And that goes back to my dad. When I was a little kid, if I had a tantrum of some sort, he would be like, okay, hold on. I want you to go to the bathroom right now, get a warm washcloth and put it on the sink and bring it to me. And I'd be like, okay. And he would literally just stick it on my face. And somehow that was a calming effect. So there's a part of me that's like, when something bad happens, I'm like, okay, that happened. Time for a warm washcloth. Let's calm down and figure out what are we going to do from here? Because you're not dead yet.
I was wondering,
So
could you share a bit about your dad? Because I was listening to one of your podcasts, and I was so touched. You were saying he was a long haul truck driver,
Yeah.
And he had to spend a lot of time away from home, but that he would come home and fix stuff you guys had broken,
Yeah.
and that you kind of recognize now what a show up guy he was.
Oh, we did not get along at all growing up because we're, I think, in some ways very similar. But yeah, he would leave on Sunday night, and
Mhm.
if we were lucky, get back on Thursday. And so, and and Thursday night, he'd come home and he'd just be, exhausted. And we just listened to him snore on the couch. We were all like sitting there watching the Waltons together or whatever. And, don't poke the bear, don't let him get up. And literally Friday and Saturday, he would be fixing all the stuff we broke. And then Sunday, he'd like, okay, bye, Dad, love you, see you. Then I wouldn't see him for, so there wasn't a lot of like, I remember once I asked him after he had retired, I'm like, hey, you want to go to a baseball game? And he's like, well, you can see it better on TV. And I'm like, you're not getting the vibe here. I want a little father-son bonding thing here. And I was like, oh, so we sat in the living room. We went to a baseball game by watching it in the living room. But yeah, growing up, I didn't get it. Number one, driving truck isn't, he had for years, he drove to the same place. So we're in Akron, Ohio. He would drive to Gary, Indiana, and drop off whatever his load was, turn around, grab something else and try. And he told me one day, he goes, I had to take a different route because I got tired of seeing the exact same things that I've seen for the last 4 or 5 years. So yeah. And so there's that because it's boring. And B, he's making this money that he never gets to spend. It's just, house and electric and gas and another beater car that needs another starter or whatever, things like that. And it was one of those things where hindsight now, being on this side, I was like, wow, what a weird life. Like he's bringing home the bacon and doesn't get to eat it. And the fact that he's got a really boring job. And, so yeah, I was like, I wish he was around for me to go, hey, Dad, I appreciate a whole lot more now than I did when you were around, because he would just come home and complain about how much milk was in a truck stop.
Yeah, but I mean, for someone like Sarah and I mean, your dad was what I call a show up parent. He's a
Yeah.
show up guy, and he's there for your mom, and he's stable, and he's bringing his A game.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. He was, and he was kind of a John Wayne kind of guy. Like he wasn't touchy feely or whatever. He was, but it wasn't, not a lot of praise coming from him. Of course, he wasn't around for all the
He
school
was from the
functions.
Midwest, so
Yes. So yeah, so I lucked out. He had dementia, and the last time I saw him, he thought I was my brother, and he looked at me and goes, "How about that, David?" And I looked at my sister and I went, like, "Hold on, I want to see what he says here." And he says, "Oh, I'm so proud of that kid," and blah 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 blah. So I was very
aw,
lucky that was the last time I saw him. I'm like, what a great way to high five out the way. So it was very cool.
aw. Well, tell us a bit about the podcasting. So you found your passion. You've found this medium, and you've been helping people. Tell us a bit about your career. So you've been for podcasting. This is a long time.
Yeah, a lot of people think you need all this great equipment and stuff like that. I know when we started, you were like, "Oh, look at your background and stuff." I'm like, I literally started with a water heater right here, a flush pipe behind me, praying that nobody would flush the toilet while I was recording, and about 6 feet that way was a furnace because I was in a basement. And so you don't have to be great to start, but you do have to start to be great. And for the first couple of years, it was horrendous because I'd gone back to school, and this was what was going to keep me in books and insurance and gas for the car, stuff like that. And it wasn't. So that's when I was like, okay, I'm designing websites, I'm teaching people guitar, I'm in a band, any kind of side hustle I could do. I was doing that. And then over the years, it's just been fun to kind of watch it grow and grow. I really got into it. I started it, and I'm in the basement in the middle of nowhere, Ohio. And after about a couple of weeks, I got a voicemail from Michael Van Laar from Nuremberg, Germany. I remember my brother was behind me, and I'm like, "Oh, somebody sent me this attachment." And I'm like, I hope this isn't a virus, kind of thing. And I click it, and I hear, "Hello, Dave. This is Michael Van Laar from Nuremberg, Germany." My brother goes, "Did he say Germany?" And I go, "Wait, hold on. Hello, Dave." This is just like we just sat there for 10 minutes going, "Hello, Dave. Hello, Dave." It's just like, is that? And I was like, wait a minute, somebody on the other side of the planet found my show, because this is back in 2005, and he liked it. And I was like, wow,
Yeah.
and that's when I was like, wait a minute. And so I saw, because I'm a teacher, as this is going to be a way to educate everyone. We're all going to learn about each other's cultures, and this is going to be this big melting pot of knowledge, instead of the selling hope for 3 easy payments that sometimes it turns into. So that was it. And then along the way, I've just had so many things. Like I work for a podcasting company now. Why? Because I have a podcast, and I didn't know it, but my podcast kind of became a resume. My biggest thing is I had a guy sent me a message, because you said that having a project can kind of help dig you out of the doldrums. And he said, my best friend of 20 years had died. I lost my job of 20 years, and I was about 95% sure I had cancer. My favorite holiday is Halloween, and I decided on Halloween I was going to blow my brains out. And he goes, but I heard you say in your podcast that sometimes having a podcast can give you a purpose. So I decided to start a podcast, and I just want to let you know I credit you with saving my life. And I'm literally next to the water heater going, wait, I'm talking about microphones and, bit rates and stuff. And I was like, this is not what I started out to do. And so that's when I was like, oh, this can kind of be, a mission in a way. Yeah. And it was like, so what was great about it is in his signature, he had his phone number. So I called him on Halloween, and I'm like, hey, this is Dave Jackson. He goes, it is not. I go, no, seriously, it is. He goes, why are you calling me? I go, dude, I need as many listeners as I can get. I can't have people knocking themselves off. And so I always try, as I say this now, I look down, Halloween's in about a week and a half. I'm like, I got to go find his number, because I've tried to call him every Halloween. I've missed a couple years here and there, but I always try to call him on Halloween just to catch up. He's a great guy, and obviously in a much better mental place than he is now. But yeah, so that's something that I have a segment of my show called Because of My Podcast. And people always talk about, money and prestige or whatever, fame in quotation marks. And I'm like, nothing will ever top somebody going, I credit you on saving my life. Because as a teacher, that's the one I'm like, okay, I didn't see that coming. That was cool. And then I've talked to other people that is not an uncommon thing, because I think we're all lonely, and again, we're in the doldrums. And when somebody comes along that you go, oh, I think this person knows exactly what I went through, and now I'm not alone, which is a lot probably of what your podcast is. There are people like, well, these people made it through and they got cheated on. And like, yeah, there's life. You just, one foot in front of the other.
And there's a better life, than somebody, devaluing you. And and
what's astonishing as well is the level of fuckwittery that goes on, which is and Tracy and I were sort of sharing some of the stories that and our special feature where we present an award to someone who has surpassed themselves in their ridiculous behavior. And it was quite interesting, Dave, watching your expression when you heard the tale of the winner of this week's award.
Yes. Shall we segue to Fuckwit of the Week?
They're shameless, unreliable, and gobsmackingly entitled. It's Fuckwit of the Week.
Hi, Tracy. This is my Fuckwit of the Week submission. So a year ago, I was in labor with our second child, and my Fuckwit asked if I minded if he went to the gym for a little bit. And being the chump that I am, thinking his, affair had ended, I said, sure, go. It's early labor. Why not? Just, have your phone on you. Make sure you're reachable in case, we need to go to the hospital. Well, long story short, he's gone for hours, and he was not reachable. I was texting him and calling him. No response. Even had his parents looking for him. Ultimately, I did finally get a hold of him, to which he gaslit me about me being crazy. So long story short, he was there for the birth, but I could not find him while I was in labor. And I'm sure he was with, his affair partner. So I hope you enjoyed that. But yeah, that's my little story. Thank you.
Oh, that's a fuckwit.
Your reaction, Dave.
Yeah. Well, as a guy who spent himself into bankruptcy trying to have a kid, to be having a kid and go, yeah, I'll be back in a minute. See ya, I got to go cheat. That's like really like, this is the miracle of birth. Something I would love to see. And you're walking out on it. So that's one, my brain right now is kind of like spinning a bit. Like, trying to processing, it's if this was a YouTube, right? My brain is buffering right now, trying to come up with a reason why would someone do that? And I just like, even if you hate your wife, right? Like whatever your spouse is, they kind of need you right now. They're having a baby. Hold their hand and tell them to breathe. I know you
They're
can't
in a lot
do much.
of pain.
Yeah. And I'm like, the fact that you can't hold their hand, I mean, give me yeah. So congratulations on your award. Well deserved. Holy cow. I can't wrap my head around that.
Yeah, it's a pretty common story. I hate to tell you there.
Well, that's the awful thing, isn't it? It's staggering, but it does seem that sometimes when women are at their most vulnerable, pregnancy scans, whatever, that's when this behavior reaches its dizzy heights.
Yeah.
Well, and it's funny bringing that up. When we were trying to have a kid, my poor ex-wife had so many things poked and prodded and this and that. And I remember once I had to forget what they were doing, but I had to wear like a lead shield or something like that, some sort of X-ray. And they're doing their business to her business, and again, not a lot of fun. And I have this weird thing where in certain areas around blood or whatever, I will straight up pass out. And so I have turned completely gray, and I'm sweating profusely, and I'm doing my best to stay there. And my wife looked over and said, "Oh, good God, get out of here." And because when I got to not be in the room, but my niece was having a baby, and so we're all there to cheer her on to a certain point, and all she did was go, and literally I wake up, I'm covered in sweat, and my brother and sister-in-law are picking me off the floor. So I always try to stay there. That guy's walking away, but I was told to leave, so there's a difference. But
well, even it's particularly admirable knowing that you would be of absolutely no help, that you would still be there, because of course you would, because of course you should be. I think my thing listening to this story is, what's more interesting? Like, clearly the affair partner is more interesting, but of all the things you could be doing, of all the places you could be, really, right, that you're not there. I mean, it just
not only that, but think about mom. You got Junior now, and like, oh yeah, your dad walked out on me in the middle of me giving birth to you. Not a great first impression.
No, it's a terrible first impression.
And it is one of the favorite things that cheaters like to say is, it's not the children I'm leaving, it's you. But so this displays more than ever, if you can't be bothered to be there for your own child's birth, then that kind of blows that particular theory out the water.
Even coming back, my brain is still like, nope, still don't have an answer. Don't quite understand that one. It's crazy.
I think on that birth certificate, I would not be writing his name in.
Yeah. I
think I would be like, no parental rights for you.
NA, yes.
Yeah, does not apply. I don't know. This is just, thank you for the donation, the sperm, goodbye. I'd be out. I mean, but it's just completely horrific. Sarah, you had a fuckwit and you had 4 children. Please tell me this didn't happen to you.
He did fall asleep actually when I was going through I had snoring coming through, but he wasn't present. That's all I will say. I mean, I think I've told you the story. I was in hospital for a long time when I was having my first son, and I'd been in there for a whole month and I hadn't been allowed out. And then the hospital said, look, we'll allow you to go out for Sunday afternoon, but I wasn't allowed to drive. So I was waiting for him to come and pick me up to give me my little release from the hospital. He didn't turn up. And so I try and track him down. And I eventually managed to get hold of his mother, who said, oh, he's just round here for his Sunday roast. Just you leave him be. And you think, well, actually, who needed him at that point? I was sitting there waiting for him. He was and actually, if I look back now, I think I should have left at that point. That's the moment that I should have said, no, let's not just have this child, but 3 more children with this man. But I did go on and have 3 other children, and it did get progressively worse. And I think that he's kind of got his comeuppance, because my 3rd son is 16 in 9 days' time. When you're 16, you can change your name by deed poll. So he is removing his father's name from his name. So he will become Theo Gorrell as opposed to Theo Stacey. But not only that, but he, as his middle name, his middle name will be Clifford. Cliff was the name of my lovely stepfather who was there, who died quite recently, and he was present, and he's left his mark on that 16-year-old that his own father will never do.
Yeah, the show up people are the people that matter. And yeah.
But that's it. I was lucky enough in marriage number 2 to inherit teenagers, and I walked into them and I said, look, I'm not going to replace your dad. Don't want to replace your dad. I'm your transitional coach. I'm here to get you from point A to point B. And one of my favorite memories is there were 2 girls and 1 boy, and the middle girl was singing. She's like, hey, can you play the guitar at this talent show for me? And her actual father had started another family and had more kids and kind of forgot he had 3 to start with.
Oh.
And so they asked her, her name was Kelly. They're like, Kelly, like, who's the old guy with you? You know, they're like, is that your dad? Well, she knew her real dad was not going to be in the audience. And she said, yeah. So I got to be dad for a day. It was really cool. And we won, which was even better. So
you won.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, I like the contrast between the good show up people and the fuckwit of the week. And Nicole, I'm sorry that this happened to you. Yeah, but better days ahead without that guy. Oh my God, it's addition by subtraction to get rid of someone like that.
It is. You know, just think of it like those athletes that wear like the weights on they have these weighted vests and ankle weights, like you're just taking them off. And sometimes we don't realize how free that's going to sound or feel until you actually get away from them. You're like, classic example. I was in my apartment. This is after divorce number 2. And I was sitting there and I was like, I feel different. Like, I don't know how to explain this, but like, why do I feel so different? And it dawned on me, oh my God, I'm happy. It's been so long since I've been happy, and I'm not, I was thinking the Bruce Springsteen line, end up like a dog that's been beat too much. So where you're kind of, and I was like, oh, you know what? I remember this. It's happy. I actually don't mind driving home. So yeah. So look forward to better days. They're on their way.
Better days. Well, on that note, thank you. Thanks for being here, Dave. And tell us how people can find you. So let's give a shout out to the School of Podcasting.
Yeah, everything about me you can find at schoolofpodcasting.com. And if that's not enough, because some people are like, yeah, but you do more than the School of Podcasting. If you go to powerofpodcasting.com, that is all of my podcasts. And if you stand next to me long enough, I will probably start another podcast. It's a bit of a sickness for me.
Well, thank you for starting them. Thank you. You've helped us out, and I really appreciate you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
That wraps another episode of Tell Me How You're Mighty. You want to leave us a mighty story or a fuckwit of the week submission? Check out our new website, tellmehowyourmighty.com. That's yours spelt YOURE. We've got all the episodes, show notes, links to our guests, and you can see the tea room where Sarah and I first met. If you enjoyed this episode, please review the podcast and follow us. Thanks. See you next week.